Now for our daily debate, and today we are staging another Brexit rematch. With me are John Mills, who's chairman of JML and also of Labour Leave, and Lord Billimoria, chairman and founder of COBRA Beer, a supporter of Remain when it was all voted on back on June the 23rd. Welcome to you both. I suppose really what we're doing is a health check of the whole process. How do you think it's going, Brexit?
Well, it's been a bit of an interregnum between the 23rd of June and the end of March. And there's obviously a lot of positioning going on, a certain amount of grandstanding going on. I think some people are adjusting their positions. I mean, I think the electorate certainly doesn't want a rerun of the referendum. I think they want the result accepted and for negotiations to proceed on the basis of getting the best deal we can for Britain, recognising that there are all sorts of pressures from Europe which we have to accommodate to some extent, but we don't want to give too much away.
As far as you're concerned, Lord Billimoria, is it still an open question whether Britain's going to leave the EU or not, or do you accept the referendum rules everything, legal challenges, parliamentary debate, overrules them?
I've made it very clear all the way into the build-up to the referendum that I personally am a Eurosceptic and being critical of a lot of things about Europe. I don't like the European Parliament at all. I think the Euro is a disaster. It's only a matter of time before it breaks out. One size cannot fit all. But on the other hand, I felt the best thing for this country, for our future, for our people, would be to stay within the European Union. And I went so far as to say, even if the EU were to break up, I would rather we're at the table, knowing what's going on, trying to help out. And at the moment, there is a danger that that might happen, and we might be a catalyst for it, and we're not going to be at the table.
So as a parliamentarian, are you saying you are going to fight in the ditches to resist this happening, Britain leaving the EU?
What I believe, and what I think is wrong when the Prime Minister says things like, are you playing for Team Britain? Well, hang on. She's an MP representing a constituency. When you're elected for a constituency, it may be you're voted in with a majority, but you represent all your constituents. And she's here to look after the interests of the whole of the country, of which 48% of the people who voted to remain.
OK, that's her. What about you, though? I'm still trying to get to the point. Are you accepting that Britain is coming out of the EU and you as a parliamentarian will assist in that process, albeit with your reservation?
We are only in the foothills here. Things are being unveiled and revealed as we go along.
It's sounding awfully like a no that you're going to carry on resisting.
I will continue to highlight what is in the best interest of this country, and it is not in the best interests of this country to leave the European Union. It's as simple as that. It is damaging us. Look at all the race and hate crime that has existed. 30 years I've lived in this country from coming from India as a student. I never experienced racism at all. This year, before and after the referendum, tweets, emails, letters. People hide behind tweets. I've had letters, handwritten 5-page letters of hate, telling me to go back to where I came from. We don't want you in your lot. Go back to India. That's appalling. That's what this country has come to, and we've grown into a cosmopolitan, vibrant, open, fantastic country.
Okay, a lot of issues there. First of all, he clearly thinks it's a bad idea, and he's going to use what power he has to resist it. What do you think of that?
I think it's very undemocratic. I mean, the decision was taken. If it had gone the other way, you wouldn't have been campaigning to get it changed back.
You might be.
Well, I was involved in 1975,
yeah.
So I sort of went for 40 years or something.
Would have gone on, wouldn't
yes, it? Maybe. But I mean, not campaigning to reverse a decision that was taken just a few months ago. And I think what Parliament ought to do is to accept the result of the British people. It's very clear that the referendum, although not strictly legally binding, was one which the government had to take account of. And I think now that we are where we are, we need to get on and do the best we can.
Let me make it clear. I'm not going to try and reverse the decision. We're going to have to debate this. And one of the reasons I'm very keen that Article 50 should go through Parliament is I think Parliament should be involved right from the very beginning. And this will make that statement that although we're not going to turn down triggering Article 50, we'll be involved in the process because that's the role of Parliament, to be a check and a balance and in the best interests of the country.
OK, now, appreciating that we're still in the transition phase, I think we would all agree in that. So far, has this vote been a good or a bad thing for Britain economically and indeed socially, as Lord Billimoria was pointing out about what he believes has been an upsurge in racism?
Well, economically, I think we've done perhaps surprisingly well compared to what a large number of people, including the Treasury and OECD and the Bank of England, goodness knows who else, said. The figures are up in almost all categories, which I think is very encouraging. I must say, I do think that some of the people who voted for Remain are rather disappointed by these good figures and would have been preferred to them to being worse.
And on hate crime, do you think there's been an upsurge there?
I must say, my experience, and I campaigned all over the place during the referendum, was that there was always some racist around. But I have no direct experience of this myself. And most of the people I found who were voting for Leave had good reasons for doing so. They felt that their services were under pressure. They felt that they were being competing for Labour with people coming in who were prepared to work for much less. And these seem to be non-racist, perfectly legitimate reasons for people wanting to vote Leave.
There's no question that there's a huge rise in race crime and hate crime, and
Well,
I can talk about it personally.
rise, but not that much.
This is from all quarters you're hearing this. But on the economy side, the first signal that this was a bad thing was the whole world, including Europe, doesn't want us to leave the EU. The drop in the value of the pound was the first signal that the world said, we don't like this, we don't like the uncertainty. And by the way, the pound at one stage was $5. You've got to remember, we're a quarter of that now. It's not as if
you're going back to the 1950s.
It's gradually declined.
Case,
It's gradually declined. I remember when the pound used to be at $2 to the pound. It's not as if our exports are going to go up immediately. And there's a time lag in these things.
Yeah.
When interest rates are put up by 15% in the late 80s, the recession that took place took a year and a half. When Northern Rock went bust in early 2007, Lehman's went bust in 2008, the recession started in 2009. So there's a time lag in these things. This uncertainty.
And you think there are signs of that decay already?
Hugely. There's a lack of investment. Already we're not at the table in Europe. There are countries that are holding, use the UK as a headquarters of going to the EU that are holding back investment. There's a lot of uncertainty.
I think this is all just exaggerated. I mean, these are just the sort of things that we were told was going to happen by all these people. It didn't occur.
But I mean, isn't the argument that if there is going to be a shock, it'll actually be in 2019 when we leave?
Well, that's what the people who were predicting dire consequences are saying now, but it's not what they were saying running up to the referendum. They said, well, let me just finish. They said that the economy would dip down immediately after the referendum, the consumer confidence would evaporate, all this kind of thing. It just didn't happen.
It's what also remember, the pound dropping, we're a net importer as a country, whether it's Europe, 45% of exports, 55% of our imports. As a country, we're a net importer. That is going to flow through to consumers. Already in supermarkets, 50% of our consumption is imported product. Our prices are going to go up, inflation is going to go up, interest rates are going to go up, and this is not going to be good.
I looked at the chart yesterday from 2000 when the euro started. When the euro started, I think it was 186 or around there of euros and cents to the pound. It's now down to 116. Now there has been a decline since Brexit, but the fact is it's been a steady decline all the way along, so it hasn't been very good for the pound being out of the EU and or be out of the euro and in the EU, has it?
No question. A drop of 20% that's unheard of. I mean, to have that drop straight after the referendum, it's still 15% down against the dollar. So that
but over the previous 15 years, there'd also been a drop of more than that, about 40%.
Yes, it had been gradually declining. That's not a bad thing overall, but I'm saying now the shock will hit us.
Well,
and it'll hit consumers.
When we came out of the exchange rate mechanism in 1992, there were dire predictions from people like you that inflation was going to go up and the economy would tank. Well, lots of other people, including John Major and all sorts of people, did say this, including the sort of people who were predicting dire consequences after Brexit. Actually, what happened was we had 15 years of growth and inflation went down. So these people are not always right in what they say.
I've always said we shouldn't join the euro, and the best thing we did was not to join the euro. But now, if the euro breaks up and we're not at the table, I think we should be at the table. We're missing out at the moment. And we're missing out on foreign investment. We're reliant. We're the second largest recipient of foreign investment in the world. And the City of London, the passporting rights, the movement of people. And look at the Brexiteers falling apart. Now suddenly Boris Johnson says, well, I'm OK with movement of people. Then David Davis says, well, I'm OK with putting some money into staying in to have access to the single market. And then you have the Prime Minister posturing, saying, I want a red, white and blue Brexit. I mean, this is all falling apart in front of our eyes.
But, I mean, you're really exaggerating the position. You're bound to have some disagreements about the best way of going ahead. I think it's almost certain that we're going to have to pay some money into the European Union, simply because we've got all sorts of agreements on arms procurement and terrorism and all the rest of it, all of which cost some money to maintain. So I think we should go on paying that.
And also with migration, by the way, with migration, we've got the highest level of employment, lowest level of unemployment. What would we do without all the 3 million EU immigrants here?
Well, that is a big question. We'll have to have a rematch. But for now, thank you very much indeed. Let's go back.